Hi, I'm Lauren Smith with PBS Books. Today we have a special collaboration with One Detroit for an inspiring author talk with best-selling author Ruta Sepetys. Now, Detroit has been the inspiration for countless stories, but in this amazing new novel, Ruta takes us back to a fascinating time in Detroit's history in her new novel, A Fortune of Sand. Ruta, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So tell us all about the book. What inspired it?
Oh, what inspired it? My love for Detroit. Also what inspired it is my question, what determines how history is preserved and recalled? Many people don't know that Detroit was once considered the Paris of the Midwest. So I wanted to go back to Detroit's golden age and bring that history out of the dark via a story.
Yes, so it takes place in 1920s Detroit. What was different about that time than now, and how does that sort of factor into the story?
Well, what's interesting is, there are things that are different, of course, what the clothes that people are wearing and technologies, but the echoes of things that remain the same. What surprised me about the 20s was that the dominant narrative of the 20s that we've accepted, flappers and jazz and, that's not the complete narrative. And when I started to look into Detroit history, I did find the complete narrative that represented what was happening across the entire country. And A Fortune of Sand follows an automotive family, the Lennox. And the youngest daughter, Marjorie Lennox, is an aspiring fashion designer. And this is a very wealthy family who's behaving badly and gaining a lot of power while doing it. And Marjorie discovers a web of lies in her own family and then has to face a terrifying truth. Just how far will an American dynasty go to keep their secrets? And those were things that I was uncovering about the city of Detroit. And the story was built with bricks from actual true stories.
Wow. And you actually looked into some of the old photographs and researched some of the old articles and papers. Talk to us about the research process.
Oh, sometimes I wonder, am I more of a researcher than I am a writer? I love the research process. So to research this book, every morning with my coffee, I read the newspaper from whatever day it was, but in 1927, the setting for the book. And what I found, again, was so interesting because the papers in the city of Detroit, so the Free Press, the news, at the time there was the Detroit Times, I was reading something, but then when I would go to a newspaper, let's say from Battle Creek or Lansing or Traverse City, there were stories that weren't reported in the Detroit papers themselves. And keep in mind, during that time, newspapers carried so much power. Newspapers, society pages, obituaries.
Which we talk about in this novel.
Exactly, right. And that's where the stories lied. But then I happened to be researching in another paper, and there was news of a huge heist that had taken place from the Detroit Institute of Arts. A 12-foot case of jewels. And it was not in the city papers. And then I looked, it was in the Windsor papers, and the Windsor papers were pointing fingers, and the others. So this was my new research experience myself. I've written many books, but wait a minute, what lies outside the frame?
And what powers control the narrative?
That's it. What powers control the narrative? And now, of course, social media is maybe controlling the narrative or the legacy, the photos we're posting and things. But back then, I did find that obituaries and death notices, people were very particular. But think about it, this was their history. But in one particular case of something I was researching related to the book, I don't want to give any spoilers, something didn't add up to me. So I filed a request to get access to a death certificate. And what was reported on the death certificate is not what was in the obituary. So there was this great contrast of fortune and facade. And as a writer and a creative, we need that, right? We need those opposing forces. They illuminate each other. So I really leaned into the fortune and facade of Detroit.
I love that. And let's talk a little bit about the title, A Fortune of Sand, and that metaphor.
Yes. So, and also, do authors title their own books? For me, it's a team sport. Writing is a team sport. I work with my agent and my editor. But in A Fortune of Sand, so sand is something that we walk on. Sand is something that we wipe from our shoes, right? But there's a paradox there. Sand slips through our fingers. So it's something that we might disregard. But in a certain situation, sand can become really strong. You know, sometimes when it's wet or under the right circumstances, we need sand to make glass. And the Lennox family, they run a glass empire. And glass then has these contrasts that if glass can provide protection from the elements, it's something that maybe helps us see, but it can also become distorted and it can shatter. And so when I was thinking about it, I thought, oh my goodness, all these contrasts and juxtapositions. I'm gonna try to put those together into a title, A Fortune of Sand.
I love that so much. And I thought the book was so great. It's sort of a mix of historical fiction, but it feels a little gothic to me as well. It's sort of spooky without there being any real ghosts. And there's some really interesting, like, just Detroit landmarks. There's, you know, the Grosse Pointe mansions, but then there's also like Eloise Asylum and things like that. I think for Detroiters, it's going to be a fascinating look at a city that maybe you hadn't considered in this way.
I hope so, because, you know, history can be haunting. And Detroit during the 20s was a city at war with itself. This was during Prohibition. And think about what was going on. But also, I want people to know and appreciate Detroit. Detroit during this time period wasn't looking to the future. Detroit was creating the future, right? And so I really wanted people to I don't know, understand Detroit during this age.
And you have a little nod to Detroiters in the cover of the book with the coloring. Talk to us about that.
I do. So when my publisher was designing the cover, which has this Art Deco, they said, do you have any color preferences? And I said, yes. There's a certain shade of blue. And so I sent them the Pantone chip. And of course we have like silver for automotive steel. And they said, oh, beautiful, Michigan Lake Light. And I said, sure. Or if you know, it's Honolulu blue, which is the color of my beloved Detroit Lions. So don't know if I can talk about that outside of Detroit, but
it's perfect.
But it's a special nod to the city and matching the uniforms.
We love it. We love it. And the dedication in the book is for the Motor City, where the wheels of history keep turning. Why did you want to dedicate this to the city of Detroit?
Because the city of Detroit is a city of resilience, a city of reinvention, and reinvention takes resilience. And I think that is a superpower, resilience. And Detroit has that. The people of Detroit know that we're not just a headline, right? We're a heartbeat, and I wanted people to know that.
Well, Ruta, thank you so much for joining us on One Detroit and on PBS Books. Your novel, A Fortune of Sand, is available now. We encourage you to pick up a copy. I am Lauren Smith for PBS Books and One Detroit. Thank you for joining us.
Watch One Detroit, Thursday at 7:30 p.m. You can find more at onedetroitpbs.org or subscribe to our social media channels and sign up for our One Detroit newsletter.